Released in 1999 and directed by Mike Judge, starring a plethora of actors and actresses such as Ron Livingston and Jennifer Aniston, and ranking high on the tomato meter at an 80% with a 93% audience score. This film has a great comedic take on corporate America that is clearly all too real for many, many people. This film continues to stand the test of time and still holds up incredibly well. Up next on You've Never Seen It, we're talking Office Space. Welcome to You've Never Seen It, an audio podcast where I, your host, Allison Salamone, am on a journey to never have to hear these 4 words again. Joining me today to discuss this first-time watch is someone who chose this movie because of his own history in the corporate world. One, he's not watching every Ghostbusters on repeat. I'm excited to welcome today my good buddy, Moose Haas. Hi, Moose.
Yeah, hi, Allison. We're going to have to talk about your TPS reports. Did you get the memo?
Did you get the memo? Yeah, the cover letter changed.
Yeah, hi.
Oh my God. The amount of anxiety the first 10 minutes of this movie gave me was I don't know if I was so close to just being I'm all done. I can't do this. All done.
So there's a brilliant part in the beginning of this movie that is so true to my life because one, I live in Southern California where traffic is absolutely atrocious. But then two, just a one-way commute to my office is 40 miles. And it is hit or miss. Especially with California traffic, I can leave at one time and go, okay, if I hit traffic at this time, I will hit nothing. And then there's other times where it feels exactly like the beginning of Office Space, where there's the old man with the walker walking faster than I'm driving. And then I switch lanes, and as soon as I switch lanes, the lane that I was in actually starts to go forward. That's so true.
Always.
And that resonates so much. Every time I watch that, I can't even laugh because it's so true to my day-to-day commute. So
it's too real. It's too real.
Absolutely is.
Yeah, no, I was laughing watching that whole opening scene because the one guy, what's his name?
Michael Bolton?
No, not Michael. He was funny though. That's me driving in traffic. But my husband was the Samir who's sitting there and screaming and shaking the wheel and everything. I started dying. I was like, oh, that's Frank. How sweet. They put him in here too.
I kind of go through the 3 of them at different stages during the week because there will be sometimes even today. So because this is audio only, I'm taking this from my office because I couldn't get out of work early enough where without hitting traffic and then sitting like Samir, come on, motherfucker, I gotta get home. So it was totally
I know, even often I'm I can wait till you. I was I can wait till you get home. You're nope, my office is fine. We're
gonna do it from the office. It's appropriate. We're reviewing Office Space. I'm gonna do it from the office.
It only makes sense. I am so excited about this. It's working out really well for me. So I guess kind of with that being said, why Office Space? When you saw my list and you saw it was on there, you were immediately jumped on it. So what about this movie were you I got to talk about this with her? I can't believe you've never seen it.
So I think I kind of expressed that a little bit when we were kind of having a bit of dialogue before, and you nailed it with your introduction. For 15 years of my life, I worked in a corporate structure environment, very, very corporate America structure. And this movie, it's funny. So the first time I saw this movie, I saw this in theaters in '99. I was in high school, and I remember walking out of this and saying, you know what, the funniest parts were in the commercials. and it just didn't resonate with me. I was too young. And then I rewatched this movie like 5 years later, a little bit into the workforce, had graduated college, and then it started to really, some of the jokes started to hit a little more.
Yeah.
Revisited a couple of years later, where I'm at this point, I'm tenured in the corporate world, and I'm like, oh my god, this movie is brilliant. And so when
Right.
I saw this on your list, this movie, I think anybody who has ever seen this movie, who has worked for maybe 5 or more years, has had some sort of a supervisor from this like satire that they can absolutely relate to. They've had a Bill Lumbergh.
Oh
They've
yeah.
had the boss from Tchotchkes, the,
Yeah.
the the
My
passive
favorite part, I would
aggressive.
say, the whole Chotchkis part when because I'm very much Jennifer Aniston in this, where like he keeps being like, "Yeah, I can't help but notice your flair," and she's like, "If you want me to wear 37 pieces of flair, then maybe that should be what the rule is.
Yes.
Otherwise, like, it's fine. I'm wearing 15 pieces. I don't understand."
But I think that everybody has had that supervisor at
Hmm.
some point in time in their life where it's such a passive aggressive dig, and they're not clear with the instructions
Right.
that they're giving you, that you leave the conversation confused and frustrated.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
and you're like, okay, so more or less, because it says we're 15, I'm wearing 15.
Right.
And then he's like, well, so and so's got 40 pieces of flares. It's like, oh,
And there's always
okay, well,
and
40 then.
and it's even like they even hit like the serving job like the nail on the head, because like I've worked in restaurants,
Yeah.
and there's always that one server that's just over the top. I'm like, bro, you're working at a Longhorn. It's
Right.
not that
Right.
serious.
Yeah.
Like let's bring it down a notch. Like it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah. I bartended at one point in time in my life, and there was that bartender who was like everyone's therapist. And I get it. That's what a bartender is
Right.
supposed to be. But at some point in time, it's like, this is what you do with your life. Like, you show up specifically to be that guy. Uh,
Right. Like
and
this is what you wanted to achieve. Okay, cool. I
yes,
guess. Like I
there's a
have different goals, but okay.
there's that brilliant moment in this movie where, like, after Peter Gibbons, Ron Livingston's character, has gone under, he shows up to Chotsky, and the guy shows up. He's like, hey, welcome back. And he just grabs him by the shoulders and moves him to the left. And it's just like, no, like, we're not dealing
And
with this kid today.
how often have you, like, how many times in your own life have you just wanted to do that to someone? Like, just no thank you. Just
Yeah, more times than I can count.
one, at least
For
once a
sure.
day, I feel like that feeling just pops up.
For sure.
And then you mentioned, everyone has a Lumberg in their life, and I can, like, mine perfectly was when, probably not that long ago, but I used to work for doing a behavior analysis for an organization we have group homes like with adults, and the executive director that we had, bless his heart, brilliant man, but like that whole like, yeah, like he would like come to your office door, and he for somehow had like the quietest shoes on the face of the planet. And then so you would be like, I would literally be working on like my master, like when I was in school finishing my master's, I'd be writing my papers at work because like I really had nothing else to do. And then all of a sudden he'd be like, so Allison, I'm like, Jesus Christ, where did you come
The
from?
ninja move, yeah.
The worst.
I think anybody in corporate America that's in an upper management position just has like this quiet shoes retailer that they go to, and they just know how to be able to sneak up. I 100% believe that, because yeah, I too, at the job I worked for 15 years, that was very corporate structured environment. As I moved up, the more like Bill Lumberghs I started to work for.
Hmm.
And one of them in particular, Jill, was like a ninja, exactly what you're describing, but was totally Bill Lumbergh. She at one point in time was like a corporate lawyer, and
Uh-huh.
had become like the VP of operation of this company, and talked so slow,
Oh no.
and always started with, yeah, hi. And so again, like, I would rewatch Office Space, and like I would recommend it to like coworkers, and like, dude, you have to watch this. Jill is Bill. And like they would call me the next day and be like, oh my God, like she is totally Bill. And yeah, hi. And then there would just be the long, like awkward silences where you're like
Hmm.
waiting for instruction or direction. And it'd be like, okay, need you to come in tomorrow and work some overtime. Thanks, bye. And then just walk away. Like, it's so funny and so true, like this movie. And yeah, movie came out in 1999, and some of the stuff is dated, and some of the humor is a little dated for the time. But at the same time, like the satirical like points that it makes regarding like bosses and corporate structure in
Yeah.
America still rings true. Absolutely rings true.
Oh, when I was actually again talking with Frank, he was like, he even mentioned before I was coming in here to record, saying how he hadn't watched it in a long time and what did I think of it and how did it hold up. I was like, I think it held up really
Yes.
well because none of that has changed. Like there's still so many just out of touch bosses, and then I honestly I really loved the John C. McGinley of it,
Oh, Bob,
where he's like,
the
so
Bobs.
what exactly do you do here? Like over and over again, that whole, and really like again, how many people do you work with that you're just like, what is your job? Like, what do you do?
Yeah. So again, working for this company for so long, and I don't work for them anymore, but working for this company for so long, I wore a lot of different hats. My career with them evolved in a lot of different ways. And at one point in my career with them, I was a Bob. And so even that like rings like true to me because I'm like, oh shit, I really was that guy sitting there and be like, yeah, this guy's
Yeah,
done.
like,
And what exactly do you do
you
here?
do. And then like as soon as Ron Levy's like just doesn't care anymore because he gets stuck in that hypnotic state, they end up like promoting him because the Bobs just love him, and like how he's just like
Yes.
throwing whatever, like all caution, like does not care. And there's like, Peter's great, and like trying to tell Gary Cole about it, and he's like, yeah, no, he doesn't really show up on time, and like the Bob's like, I don't know what you're talking about, this man's amazing.
Well, then the Bobs flip it on him too,
Yep.
and they're like, "How much time do you spend on these TPS report bills?" That is brilliant because that's exactly what consultants do. Like, "Oh, you're not going to listen to me? Okay, well, let's evaluate you
Yeah,
then."
oh man, God, this movie's so great. It is so good. So kind of like backtracking a little bit because we dove really hard into it, but kind of just back into like your history with movies and things like that is, like what got you into like watching the films? You know, you're a big Ghostbusters fan. Everyone who knows you
Mm.
knows how much you love Ghostbusters. I got to kind of watch you and your family do a tournament bracket of like your family of like your favorite movies, which of course Big Trouble in Little China should have won, but
Hey,
I
hey,
mean, you
hey,
know, who am
hey,
I?
hey, hey. The appropriate movie won, which is Ghostbusters, which is the greatest movie of all time. Uh, yeah, so I actually had asked those guys that were doing that bracket about my favorite movies to include my family because I think I got involved in movies from the get go. My family has always been a movie family. And it's funny because that show, like having my brother, my sister, my father, my cousin, like just reminiscing about these movies, like we could sit there and when I was a kid and we would be going on a family vacation, we would play like movie trivia lines. You would recite a line from the movie and you had to guess which movie or which actor, which character it was. So movies have always been in my life. And honestly, I've only really ever talked, aside from like maybe the last like year where I've kind of gotten into this
Mm-hmm.
space, I've only ever really talked movies with either friends or family. And so having the opportunity to kind of go on a show with my family and just even seeing their evolution and like their progression in the show, like they all started nervous and then they all started to kind of open up a little bit. It was so funny afterwards. My family is like, okay, we're starting a show, like it's going to be called the
Yeah.
like family film show. They're like, Mark, you're hosting it.
That's
I'm like, great.
hilarious.
But uh movies have always been a an escape. I think everybody needs an escape.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody needs a hobby, and certainly movies was and it still is a huge outlet for me.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has to deal with stress in a different way, and it's so easy to be able to just plug into a movie, especially if you're visiting a movie that comforts you, or if there's certain scenes in movies like the last 30 minutes of Bohemian Rhapsody. I remember one time I like needed to get fired up like for something that was going to be happening the next day. And I played that part probably 3 or 4 times on repeat, just because it's so good and it just gets you into the moment and gets you immediately feeling better. And that music is just so pumped up. But I genuinely do try to stay away from certain movies. As I'm in my office and the light sensor goes off. I wish it was live. Everyone could see me go dark.
Motion sensor.
I forgot my office has motion sensor lights. So
everything again. Thank God we're not. This is audio only, so people can't see you like waving your arms every 15 to 20 minutes to make sure that
this should be live, or I'm just walking around the office.
It really.
But yeah, movies has always been a constant in my life, and you know, I've been with my wife now for 10 years. We've been married for 8 years, and she is not really a movie person. She's starting to become, but like when we first met, you know, and I would talk to her and be like, you know, what's your favorite movie? She's like, I've seen like 4 movies, so my favorite one is Forrest Gump. And it's like, that was the best of the.
It's not a bad choice.
It was a great movie. I love that movie. But it's like the best out of her 4. It's like Forrest Gump, The Notebook, and, you know, she's like, and then I weirdly saw, you know, this Will Ferrell movie. And so, like, I rewatched this with her, or I rewatched this in preparation for the show, and this was her first time watching it.
Oh, that's so fun.
And she even, like, had her own little comments. She's like, okay, she's like, I've heard you say that stuff before, like in reference to like my work. And she's like, oh my gosh, like as I'm driving, she's like, is that, or when it's the driving scene, she's like, is that how your commute is? I was like, that's exactly how my commute is.
Yeah. I'm the same. I'm kind of in the same boat as your wife. Like before, only within like I've always watched movies and enjoyed going to them, but never was as like into them as like Frank is, as my husband is. Like his favorite movie is Big Trouble in Little China, and I lied to him that I saw it when we first started dating 10 years ago because I wanted him to think that I was cool. I was like, yeah, I've seen that movie. It's great. And then like on our second or third date, he's like, you didn't see it. And I'm like, nah, because he started trying to talk to me about it. I'm like, oh yeah, that part. He's like, you've not seen this. I was like, no, I'm sorry, my bad. And here we are.
There are still certain movies that like hold true, like that we can sit in the Haas household and like talk about, and my wife will be like, I've seen that movie, I don't get it. That movie's dumb, but it holds such a special place. And I think that Office Space holds such a high, you know, Rotten Tomatoes score and holds such a high place in so many people's lives because it is so relatable.
Oh my God, it's so relatable.
Absolutely. And there's so many people who have wanted to take their computer out and bash it with a baseball bat, or who have wanted to take that copy machine, or in their case, it was the fax machine. But everybody, and the tropes are so true. Like the engineers in this, you know, the Michael Bolton, the Samirs, always complaining about the technology that they have to use. I work and manage IT guys, and every one of them has the same complaints about technology, and every single one of them I've ever worked with has the same complaints. So the tropes like absolutely like stand up. It was kind of brilliant, like film writing at the time. This movie tanked in theaters. Like this did not do well. I remember reading about this, and it was not a big hit in theaters, and throughout the years it's continued to find like this huge cult following of people. And I think everyone, whether you like want to admit it or not, but everyone has worked with a Milton Wadhams.
Yes,
the
absolutely.
Weird, squirrely, socially awkward, you know, person who is just, they're probably a nice guy, but you also have to kind of worry a little bit about them.
Right.
And they hold so tight onto, like Milton in his case held on to the ideal of his swingline stapler, right? Like he was not going to be getting rid of that.
You know what's so funny? But it's the one thing I've always known about Office Space is that the line that everyone says is actually not even a line in the movie. But like I would always hear people walk around going, have you seen my stapler? And then you watch the movie and you're like, that's not the line. The line is, I think you have my stapler. When he's talking to whoever, he's talking to I don't, the one, was he talking? I don't remember who he was talking to. But then he starts going lines like, I think you have my stapler. And then just kind of just holding on to like just the one item that he wants, and he's not even supposed to be working there anymore. Like,
Okay, so that's the other thing that rings so true is how they deal, like from a corporate end with Milton Wadhams. Is like, well, we discovered that 5 years ago he was laid off, but nobody told him, and he's still receiving a paycheck. So we fixed the problem. They're like, oh, you let go of Milton? He's like, no, we're not going to pay him anymore. And he's like, it'll work itself out. Like these things tend to work out. So it's just such a like, it's such a corporate passive move.
yeah.
I mean, so many employers don't ever talk to their actual employees. It's like, okay, well, we'll just stop paying them, and then they'll leave. They'll figure it out eventually, or we'll cut this person's hours because they're not working out. So rather than deal with the individual or the person, we're just going to cut the hours, and they're going to quit on their own accord. And so I feel so bad always seeing that scene with Milton as having been a supervisor and having worked in the corporate world and having pulled moves like that myself. Like I hate to say that, but I've done those moves.
Yeah.
And I've been like, oh yeah, this person should have been let go. So we're just going to let them go, and we'll let them find out when they receive their final paycheck.
Or we wait till a Friday, because that's the easiest thing to
Right.
How much bad news have you gotten on a Friday? Like right before you're supposed to leave. That's always when you're gonna get when no one's gonna fire you in the middle of the day. Like they still want you to do your job, but like how openly they're like, oh, we're gonna wait till Friday to let them know. Like, Jesus Christ,
it's awful.
Brutal.
Poor Milton is just, they keep moving his desk. They take his beloved stapler. They put him downstairs. They make him the pest controller. He's like, in his own way, he's like, that's not my job responsibility.
No,
like,
poor Milton, and poor even like when you see him talking on the phone, and you're like, I wonder who he's talking to, and he's just talking to Peter, who's over on the other side. He's like, Milton, I gotta go. Like, okay, bye, and then like hangs up because he's trying to get out before Gary Cole sees him, and you're just like, oh, poor Milton just wants friends, like, or like,
oh,
Milton also, he's the one who like, when you first meet him, he's listening to the radio, and he's like, and Peter's just like, hey, can you turn it down a little bit? Just he's like, I'm listening to it at a reasonable volume from the hours of 9 to 11. Just like,
I was told I could do this. Yeah. Oh, the scene that kills me the most with Milton is when he doesn't get the piece of birthday cake.
oh, I know.
And he shows up and he's in front of the line, and the like payroll lady is like, now Milton, everyone needs to get a piece.
Make sure you pass it
he's
down.
going along, and then he hands it, and the lady next to him doesn't pass it. She just starts to eat it. And it's like, oh, Milton. That's the last straw for this poor guy.
And then he burns it to the ground. And I'm like,
yes.
Takes the money. That's even better. As he walks in going to look for his stapler, finds the envelope with the traveler's checks in it from when they're trying to give it back, and then just takes the money and bounces and just sets it all on fire. It's like the one person that everyone was shitting on and no one cared about did you all the biggest favor by just letting it burn.
Yeah. And then, of course, the movie ends with him still not getting respected at
the club,
the resort. He's like, Milton, I ordered a Mai Tai and you brought me a margarita.
Yeah. But then you also have the Tom Smokowski.
Yes.
And like what ends up happening to him, because again, everyone always works with the guys like, oh, I'm gonna get fired today. There's no doubt I'm gonna get fired, and then he does get laid off, and decides he's gonna do whatever. Gets himself hit by that drunk driver, and now makes like 7 figures, and he's just the happiest he could be. That whole trope of the jump to conclusions, Matt, had me rolling. Like, just the dumbest idea ever. And then he made it when he was having his
party. He shows Peter his prototype, and it's like, oh, Tom. Like, that's awful. That's just a terrible idea.
It's a terrible idea. But now it's like he could do it. So good for you, I guess.
Yeah, Tom's the guy who in his like, he's just such like the naysayer and the doomsday, warning guy that when he meets with the Bobs, he just chokes. It's just like, I take the orders from the goddamn customers because the engineers can't deal with them. That's when Bob's just like, so what do you actually do here?
So, yeah. So what do you actually do here? Oh, poor Tom. These
Poor
just
Tom.
everyone. And the only person who like almost and like he could have come out on top of Peter, but then of course he snaps back too, and he's like, oh shit. And then oh my god, when they go through the whole plan, this movie, I love how it's like just 90 minutes, but like
Yeah.
the real big like plot and plan happens in like the last 30 minutes where they go to like swindle the company and try
Mm-hmm.
to and then it all just like happen it all unfolds so fast and then it's all done. Like you have this whole build up, you're like, so where is this going, what's this doing, and then that happens and then the movie's over and I was like, oh, okay, there we go.
Yeah,
That happened fast.
the heist I think is definitely quick, pushed, and okay, this is what they're going to do. And it's funny because the first time, or I shouldn't say the first time, but one of my viewings, I hadn't really caught on what they were doing. Was based off of like their heist was based off of Superman 3. And then Michael Bolton says it. He's like, it's basically the same thing that they did in Superman 3. The salami slicing where they take the
Yeah.
fractions of a coin. But yeah, the first like that first probably like 60 minutes of the movie where it's Peter's struggles in the beginning of the movie, and then the hypnotist doesn't do his job, dies
Yeah.
before he can snap him out of the relaxed state, and so this relaxed, you know Peter Gibbons without any type of inhibitions just goes straight into work and is just doing what everybody I think has wanted to do or say. Well, his
Yeah.
line with the Bobs where they're like, oh, you've been missing a lot of work lately, Peter. He's like, oh, I wouldn't say I've been missing it.
Or when he's talking
I'm
to
sorry.
when he's talking to Jennifer Aniston and Chachki, he's like, I don't think I want to go anymore. And she's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. And he's like, yeah, I'm just not gonna go. And I'm like,
She's like, what about money and bills? He's like, yeah, I don't like those either. I'm not going to do that anymore.
I don't want to pay those anymore. She's like, yeah, who wouldn't love to just not pay bills? One of the other people that I absolutely love in this movie is Diedrich Baker as Lawrence, the neighbor.
Dude, Lawrence is my favorite character in this movie. Just okay. Again, the characters in this movie, there's a relatable character, I think, to everybody, and I absolutely lived next door to a Lawrence.
Who hasn't?
The first time I lived on my own, I lived next to like just a blue collar guy that was exactly this guy. Knock on the door and be like, dude, check out China 9, it's the breast exam. Like I have absolutely like lived next door to that guy. And yeah, his character is by far my favorite in this movie. Just how blunt he is. And then there's the one thing when Peter's like, hey, Lauren, like after everything's falling apart, he like knocks on the wall. He's like, hey, Lawrence, you want to come over? He's like, no, I'm okay, man. And then he whispers like, I want you to fuck up my life too.
It's so good.
It's so good. Yeah.
Or like in the beginning too, when he's like talking to him through the wall and Peter's in there going, Lawrence, just come over. It's weird to talk to you. Like, I understand the walls are thin, but like just come over.
They're hatching the heist plan, and he's like, we can't tell boyfriends, girlfriends, God, Allah, we can't tell anybody. And then Lawrence is like, don't worry, man, I won't tell anyone either.
He's just always there.
He's like, who is that? He's like, don't worry, he's cool.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, Lawrence is by far the best character in the movie.
Oh, he's amazing.
His jokes hit absolutely.
And then he's the one who ends up getting Peter a new job, and like Peter's end up like thriving working in doing construction, and he just because to him it's just like it's hard work, but it's at the end of the day it's like just you get up, you go to work, he's clearly having a good time with his friends now, which is nice.
There's a few moments in here that are very poignant, emotional than I think this movie or most people take them. And one of them is two-part. One of them is Peter's interaction at the end of the movie with Lawrence doing the construction job. And I think a lot of that is like, hey, there is a job out there for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of us go into work hating what we're doing. I mean, you and I have had, separate conversations
Mm-hmm.
about like work struggles before,
Yeah.
past, present, and the way that Peter at the beginning of the movie views his life, but then also views the office. Like as he's walking in, he dreads touching the handle on the door because the handle's going to shock him. I
Mm.
remember working for this corporation, and in my mind, when I was walking in, I always used to think that the doors looked like the mouth of the monsters. I just hated going into it. I'm like, all right, I'm entering the beast again for the day. Um, towards the end, as he's rekindling his relationship with Jennifer Aniston, he kind of tells her, he's like, listen, I've come to the realization that I don't have to be happy in work. As
Mm-hmm.
long as I'm with you, I can find happiness in this life. And that is absolutely something I struggled with for a very, very long time. And it was leaving a job that I absolutely hated and coming to that realization that, listen, there are other things in life besides work.
Mm-hmm.
I don't live to work, I work to live. I
Right.
mean, there's kind of a difference between the two. And there's a very poignant moment when Peter tells her that. And then at the end, when he finds the happiness, and it's the simplest thing. He's like, you know what? We're outside, we're getting a workout. He's like, you know, Joanna's on her way. I brought my lunch in a pail. Life is good.
Yeah.
And fucking A, it's the best. Like it really kind of, there's just those two moments in this movie, like always ring true to me because I have struggled with a healthy work-life balance.
Mm-hmm.
And I work a lot. Like I routinely work like between a 50 and 60 hour work week. And finding the work-life happiness, I think for a lot of people that struggle with it, like those moments in this movie actually hit emotionally with them, and it should. And I really do think that there are times where people kind of just need to realize that, hey, it's work doesn't define you.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it does. But at the same time, like if you can't find the happiness at work, you have to find the happiness elsewhere. And maybe that it means getting another job. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's just simply like you have to enjoy more of the time outside of work and not spend the time outside of work dwelling on what happens
Right.
in the day to day.
Right.
Peter's whole life was consumed by Initech
Mm-hmm.
in the beginning of the movie. And when those inhibitions came away, Initech was a playground for him.
Mm-hmm.
And he would basically just, I mean, the one scene when he's playing Tetris on his computer in Lumber, it's like, he's like, hey, Peter, we need to talk. He's like, not now, man.
Yeah.
Go away.
After he'd
I'm a
already
little
knocked
busy.
over like the cubicle wall and his shit's just
Yeah.
everywhere, so he can like see out into the parking lot and see out in the window. The way when he does that, and then like he just like just leans back with his hands behind his head. He's like, ah. He's like, oh, who doesn't love that feeling? And like that's an important thing. Like you're right. Working to live versus living to work is a huge, huge thing. And I think a lot of people are also kind of coming to that conclusion too, ever since like the pandemic hit, and a lot of people are able to work from home. And now companies are trying to shift back into an in-person environment, but productivity for a lot of these companies were better when people were working from home. When they were sitting down and do what they needed to do, but they were by their family, they were with their pets, they were in a space that they were comfortable in and enjoyed being in, and the productivity went up. So now you're seeing people who are looking for other jobs because it means they can work from home, not because they're lazy, but they've enjoyed it and it's been able to create a better balance because you don't have that 40-minute commute when there's not traffic. You don't have the boss coming up like you're in a Zoom meeting and then the Zoom meeting's done, and chances are someone's messing around like in the beginning, like the one boss that turned themselves into a potato. Like I would have loved that. Or like the lawyer who was in like a deposition and like turned themselves into like a dog filter or a cat filter. Like I'm clearly not a cat, but like had to do this whole meeting.
I love that so much. That's my favorite one. I'm clearly not a cat.
But like it was, but to be, and I know like we're like in these years of like reboots and all of that. And not that I want like Office Space to be redone or rebooted, but it would kind of be funny. Like I could see it being done down the road with like a work from home kind of situation and making it even more relevant to where we are nowadays.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I mean, I would totally be open for like an Office Space too, but the Office Space, like you got to bring back Ron
Oh,
Livingston, and
100%.
he's at this point in time working from home, and like the struggles that he has with like a digital era. Michael Bolton working from home would be
Amazing.
the best.
Especially if he let his hair
Okay.
grow out and like started embracing.
Okay, we got to touch base. We haven't yet, but we have to touch base about the Michael Bolton
Yeah.
thing. Like
The Michael
when he's
Bolton of
sitting
it
with,
all.
yes, when he's sitting with the Bobs, and like he clearly is not a Michael Bolton fan, right?
No,
I mean,
right.
he's listening to gangster rap on his way
Yeah.
into work, and so then the Bobs are like, "Are you? Is your name really Michael Bolton?"
He's like, yes.
Yeah, he's like, "Oh, we are fans." And then when he asks, he's like, "What's your favorite song?" He's like, I guess they're all kind of great. He's like, "Oh, I celebrate his whole category." Like, so he's obviously dealing with like true Michael Bolton fans. And then at the end, like they're totally on board with Michael Bolton at
Mhm.
this point. And then at the end, he's like, "Okay, let's get down to business, there, Michael Bolton." He's like, "Oh, you can call me Mike." Their face changes,
Yeah.
and like the next scene, he's
He's
fired.
getting fired. Yep. If he just let
Yeah,
them keep calling him Michael. And it's so, and like even before that, it cracked me up when he was talking with Samir and he was like, well, why don't you just why don't you just tell people to call you Mike? He goes, and let him win. Like,
yeah. He's the one that sucks, not me. Like, yeah, that's his reasoning
give him the
behind it.
satisfaction. I was joking. It's so funny too, like with Michael Bolton listening to the gangster rap. So like Spotify at the end of every year does like your whatever year wrapped with like the music you listen to. And it was
Hmm.
really funny. One year it was like mid 2000s to like 2010s, like Warp Tour era pop punk, because that's what I listen to when I work out. So it was like pop punk for like the first like 20 songs, and then right there in the middle I had Warren G and Nate Dogg Regulate.
Yeah,
And
right.
then it went to straight pop punk after that. Like it was just my one in there that just had to play. I'm like, yeah, that would be me as Michael Bolton driving, listening to Nate Dogg. And some days you just gotta regulate, man. Like I get it. It just
Yeah,
happens.
I get it. I understand 100% too. That is a funny scene with Bolton in the beginning, though. Like the guy's pulling up next to him and he turns down the radio and locks his door.
Yeah.
Like total IT nerd.
Yeah.
Sorry to all of you IT nerds. Hey, you guys are amazing and you guys rock. But seriously, like most of you will be doing that. You're locking your door, you're turning down your gangster rap, and you're quiet until you're alone again, and
Right.
then you're
And then
the hard ass.
yeah, and then you go back to it. Oh, it's so great. Michael Bolton's wonderful. Who would you say, so if we were casting an Office Space, who do you think you would cast yourself as?
Okay, so years ago, I would have said Peter Gibbons,
Hmm.
especially early Peter Gibbons, because I really did hated what I was doing, and I had turned from a Peter Gibbons to a Bob, or to the Bobs, and I was evaluating people and I was firing people, and it was just such a mess, and I hated every
Yeah.
minute of it. So early on, I would say that uh, I think I would be Peter Gibbons, because Peter Gibbons' evolution to where he is now, like at the end of the movie, is exactly who I probably would have been over the last 10 years of my like career. So yeah, I definitely think I would be Peter Gibbons.
Nice. I would e- I would say I am a mix between the Michael Bolton and Samir's is what I would put myself as. Um
Okay.
because I think that I'm essential with where I work and I don't mind it as much. And if the Bobs weren't there, I just go about my life. But I can have the temper kind of like Samir when it comes to the traffic. But also I feel like I'm very much a Michael Bolton at heart. Where like I'm gonna sit there and tell you like, yeah, I love it so much. You're right. It's like if it means I'm keeping my job, I'm gonna tell you what you need to hear. Like I'm
Yeah.
gonna
Okay.
I'm gonna I know what we're doing. Like everyone always laughs, like don't understand. Like I love interviewing for jobs. Like it's so like I love what I do,
Uh-huh.
right? But I actually enjoy the interview process because I feel like I go into it just being myself as it is, because in my head, the worst you're gonna tell me is no. right? Like if
Yeah.
like I already know
Okay.
this is the case. And if you're going to tell me no, like you can be wrong and that's on you. Like I'm a great employee and I'm super fun to work with and I'm good at what I do. So if you're going to say no, like that's cool. You're wrong. Not my problem. There's always going to be something else. So I love like so I can sit and do interviews for days because I don't mind them as much as like everyone else is like, oh, I hate that. So like I could sit in and do my best to bullshit a Bob and be fine and just like go to town with it if it means I'm keeping my job.
So it's so funny because I am the complete opposite. I suck at interviews. I do. And look, I'm imbued with the gift of gab. And for the life of me, interviews terrify the shit out of me. They do. And I'm a horrible interviewer. I don't understand why, because I have interviewed, like been on the opposite
Mm-hmm.
side of the table interviewing people probably 10,000 times
Yeah.
in my life. And I'm great at that. But then if I'm on the opposite end, I'm terrible. Like the job that I currently have, when I was interviewing, halfway through the interview, I apologized to my now boss and was like, dude, I'm sorry, I suck at interviews. And he's like, no, it's fine. Like, it's all good. So I find it fascinating people who do enjoy interviews. Our good friend, Brother Lomas, is
Mm-hmm.
one who loves to interview. And I told him the same story. I was like, dude, I suck at interviews. I remember one time I interviewed for a company and the guy told me, he's like, look, he goes, I'm going to be honest with you. He goes, on paper, he goes, you're the guy we should be hiring. He's like, but he goes, I'm not going to waste any more of your time or mine. He's like, this just isn't going to work out. He's
Oh
like, you
no.
suck at interviews. And maybe it was that moment that like scarred me. And I'm just like, oh,
Oh
like,
no. Meanwhile, in the job that I currently have now, during my interview, when they were going over like benefits and stuff, they mentioned having like short-term disability, long-term disability, and they're like, in case you and your husband ever decide you want to be in the family way, and I literally responded with, "We haven't decided if we wanted to carry that burden yet." And then I still got the job. So I mean, like, I'll just throw it out.
nice. That's awesome.
Calling children burdens as like I'm interviewing to work with children. It's fine. They're not mine.
I would have said the same. So I'm glad we have a mutual
We're right
understanding.
there. This is why we're meant to be friends. This is how this works out. So I don't mind it. Like if I could have a job just doing interviews every single day, like I would, because I just like talking to people. That's why I love doing these podcasts. And like I've been having so much fun with talking movies, especially movies that people love, and like letting people, every single person I'm talking to has chosen the movie we're talking about. Like it's not me assigning it to people, it's people are choosing it because it's something that either resonates with them or that they love. And it's been so much fun because it makes for such a good conversation.
It's a brilliant idea. It really is. And when you had reached out and were like, hey, I'm starting this new show and this is kind of the idea behind it, what's so brilliant about it too is that you're forced to kind of one expand your like
Mm-hmm.
movie viewing, and then secondly, like you said, people, you're allowing the people to choose their topics, and you, of course, like most people will see me and go, okay, you know the Ghostbusters, you know the Star Wars, and
Right.
I'm a nerd, and so you're immediately going to be like, why Office Space of all things? And I do think that different movies resonate with different people in different ways for different reasons.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I think the concept of the show is awesome.
It's
I listened to your Tremors episode, and yeah, it's funny because I haven't watched Tremors in 20 years, but hearing like Jesse Swift, like his love for this movie,
mm-hmm.
but one of the main reasons why he loves this movie so much is because there was a connection between him and his dad.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everybody has that movie that there's some sort of an emotional connection to, that no one would have maybe pegged, that I would have chosen Office Space or he would have chosen
Yeah.
Tremors. I mean, if you know the guy, all he talks about is Tremors. But my love of Ghostbusters, one, it's the greatest movie of all time, hands down. But then two, I grew up watching
Yeah.
Ghostbusters, being a Ghostbuster with my brother and my sister for Halloween. And I think nostalgia and I think the emotional connection. Anyways, I think that people's movie going experience continues to expand. And I think people
Yeah.
revisit movies because they find new emotional connections to different movies. And I definitely think that like a movie like Office Space, it's a comedy, and not a lot of people get like an emotional response from comedy aside from the humor of it.
Right.
And again, a movie like this, I do think that as satirical and as funny as it is, and as outlandish, yeah, they take a copy machine out into an open field and beat it to death. I mean, you would expect to see something like that in like a mob movie, and that's kind of how they treated that scene, like handing off the baseball bat as they're beating, the
Yeah.
rat fink printer that would never work for them.
Right.
But then I do think that movies like this definitely strike like an emotional chord. Like I said, there's that scene where he rekindles with Jennifer Aniston that I think is actually probably the best scene in the movie, because that few lines of exchange that he has between him and her is so true for so many people.
Yeah.
So many of us get held up on how much we hate work and how much we want to win, and we want to see our boss in the middle of the street and not slow down. And
Yeah.
so I definitely think that like being able to take certain things from certain movies, especially from an emotional standpoint, is critical in like your like movie evolution. And like I said, the first time I watched Office Space, I was like, okay, there's two funny moments in this movie, and it was in the commercial, and I was 17, 18 years old. How old was I? 1999. I was 17 years old when I first saw this movie, and then revisited again after working, had a different response. The humor started to hit again, and I think that's why this movie's fan base rating is so high on Rotten Tomatoes. Yes, the critics love this movie because critics love good satirical movies,
right.
But I think the fan score is absolutely critical, because as people's who have viewed this at an early age, like I can probably in 10 years show this to my nephew and it would resonate with him in his work life. And so I think that's why so many people come back and revisit Office Space. It's certainly why I do. It's why I recommend it, because there's so many tropes in Office Space that are just so freaking relatable.
Oh my God. No, absolutely. And it's probably, out of everything that I've watched so far, it's definitely up there in like one of my favorite movies that we've watched, because you said when a movie not only just hits on so many on a hilarious level because it's a comedy, but also you get those little emotional beats in there. And then I sit back and I'm like, this is by the same guy who does Beavis and Butthead. Like that's
right.
Like this is the same dude. I think that goes to show like he's got some range to be able to hit all of that, because like you said, like with just movies in general, I mean, I have my list of things that are my go-to when I need a good cry. Like I'll just fast forward to the end of Deathly Hallows Part 2 for Harry Potter when I need a good cry. Like I'll just watch that Snape scene. If I need a laugh, like I have movies that I like to watch just to sit down and like kind of just go have like Big Trouble in Little China is one of my favorite mind-numbingly just sit back and do whatever kind of movies. And being with my husband has helped expand my knowledge and my enjoyment of things.
Oh, for sure.
Like you said, that rekindling with Jennifer Aniston, and that realization that I don't have to be stuck in this job that I hate and be miserable and do all these things. But even if I am stuck in this job, or I am in this job, I have this thing right here that's worth all the good in the world that I have. And I need to make sure I don't ruin that. And that's where I need to put my energy and my time. And once you have something like that, how important it is to kind of hold on to and do what you need to do. And that you're right, that just hits home with so many things, and it puts so much into perspective. And I love when a comedy can also make you think, rather than just sitting back and listening to like fart and dick jokes, like with like some comedies, which is fine.
And
sometimes.
Those exist in this movie too. Yeah, it exists in this movie too. But at the same time, like, it absolutely the thought process is there. The crazy thing about this movie too is this was Mike Judge's first movie. He went from Beavis and Butthead, and he had just scored the contract with Fox for King of the Hill.
Oh yeah, that's right, King of the Hill. God, I loved that show.
So he was one season into King of the Hill, and then Fox was like, "Yeah, okay, we'll give you some money to make this movie." He there was like the budget was like $10 million. Like there's nothing like special
Right.
effect wise in this movie that's gonna blow it out of the water. But he made this movie for nothing. It tanked in the box office. It didn't do well, but like now over time, this movie has stood the test of time and like still stands as like that satirical comedy about corporate world in America.
It has a
Uh,
killer soundtrack
from
too.
'99 and oh, dude, I still have this soundtrack as part of like, okay, I need to get amped. I'm playing Damn It Feels Good to Be a
Yeah.
Gangster. Having a bad day at work, I'm playing Take This Job and Shove It. Like, yeah, absolutely, the soundtrack rocks.
It's so good. I think that's what I was watching and I sent in a group chat with friends. I was like, this fucking soundtrack slaps, man. This shit's good. Like I
Yeah,
love a good soundtrack
it's
and I
great.
love a good score. Again, why I love Carbon so much, doing his own scores. Uh Big Almost Famous is one of my favorite movies. Killer soundtrack. Empire
Mm,
Records. Killer
yeah.
soundtrack. Now I can throw Office Space
Oh,
on.
Empire
Oh, I love
Records.
Empire Records. It's such who
Yeah.
did it? All I wanted to do was work at a music store after seeing Empire Records, and I never did. The one job I never held, but I wanted to so bad. So people tell me all the time, they're like, "Your gap in movie knowledge is wild. I've seen They Live, but I've never watched like Schindler's List or apparently Office Space or."
No, sure.
People are like, "What is wrong with you?" I'm like, "I don't know. It just is what it is."
I think everybody has those blind, yeah, because of like my innate fear of horror movies. Like I have quite a gap in horror
That's fine.
movies, and be like we are our like go-to couple friends, our best buddies, Kyle and Amanda. Like they are huge horror fans, and she'll be like, "Oh, did you watch The Quiet Place too?" And I'm like, "Of course I fucking didn't
Not
watch
at
The
all.
Quiet Place
No,
too."
no, I did not.
Like,
Zero.
she's like, "Oh, but it has your boy Krasinski in it." It's like, I don't
Cool.
care, and he dies. Like,
He was gone in the number.
I
Like,
don't need
I
to
don't
see
want. Why
that.
do I need it? Yeah.
Yeah, I need to see him as Jim from The Office, not as a dead man killed by a creature that is going to keep me up while
Right.
I sit trying to not make any noise.
I remember in high school, I got my best friend and I were going to the movies, and I wanted to go see Sweet Home Alabama, and like that was the plan. Like that's what we were gonna go see. This cute Reese Witherspoon rom com, and it was gonna be great. And we get there, and it was sold out. So we're like, all right, what are we
Oh,
gonna go see then? And the only other movie that was playing at the same time was The Ring. Yeah,
oh,
I slept with my lights on at like as a junior in high school. Just all
awful.
the lights on. It was terrifying. Um, so yeah, but
Okay, I'll tell this one. I'll tell this one more
okay,
horror story. So I have a love affair with Sam Neill. I
yeah.
love Sam Neill. Jurassic Park is one of my favorite movies too, and that came out at such an impressionable age for me that like Sam Neill was my go-to guy. Next year, my wife and I are going to New Zealand. We're going to go to his winery. He has a
Oh,
winery called Two
that's
Paddocks.
fun.
If you're on Twitter, find the Taika Waititi video where Taika took his children to Twin Paddocks. It's hilarious. Taika is the man. But so Sam Neill, shortly after Jurassic Park, was in a movie called Event
Hmm.
Horizon, and I thought it was a space movie starring my boy Sam Neill. So I went and saw Event Horizon once. I will never revisit that movie again. If you have never seen Event Horizon, let me sum this up. The ship goes into a black hole and then it comes back, but there's nobody on board. And then a rescue crew goes to find out what happened to the ship. And oh, the ship went to
Oh,
hell and it's possessed by the
oh no,
devil. And the devil's eating everybody
oh
on the
no.
ship. It's possessed by the devil by the end of the movie. It's the scariest freaking movie. And so I no longer go see movies, especially horror movies, based on the actors that I like or am fans of. It's like, okay, if you're in that movie,
Yeah.
I'll read the synopsis on Wikipedia so I can get it right in the Schmoedown. That's really all I need to know.
That's about it. Frank thoroughly enjoys when I go out of town without him, so he can catch up on all of his scary movies that I've like kept him from watching.
My wife has a degree in biology, and so like I don't like blood and guts and horror and that kind of stuff, but she finds it like interesting and fascinating, and so she can tolerate that kind of stuff. While I'm just like, oh, gross! Like,
yeah,
the dog and I are sleeping on the couch tonight.
A bulldog, he'll protect you.
Darby's got me covered.
Well, with all that being said, I think I'm gonna get into my rating of Office Space. I think I'm going 4 stars. 4 out of 5 stars on my Letterboxd with Office Space. I think probably as I watch it more, it might end up going higher. But this is another movie. I'm really glad I waited to watch this movie until I had either this or like just waiting until now. Like if someone suggested to me to watch it now without like having this whole podcast thing, I would watch it and be like, oh, I would still love it for what it is. And I'm so glad that like I hadn't seen it until now, because I feel like I can actually appreciate what it's trying to do.
Agreed. I think Office Space for people at the time that were too young to watch this movie is like trying whiskey at 16. Like it's not good. It burns. And it's a waste of your time, and you don't want anything to do with it. But then as you grow older and you have more life experiences and your palate changes, that whiskey starts to become a little bit better, and so does Office Space. And I think because of that,
taste the smokiness in it,
right? Exactly.
Hints of walnut.
So because of that, I think I'll probably give Office Space like a 4, maybe like a 4.2 out of 5 stars.
Like
it definitely is a movie that, like I said, if I didn't have so much corporate world experience, maybe I wouldn't appreciate it as much. But I think everyone has worked with these types of characters before, so that it's relatable. I think everyone has had a supervisor like these types of characters. So I think it's relatable. So yeah. I think anybody who hasn't grown up with a trust fund and has had to go out and work can absolutely sit back and go, okay, I've had to sit in that kind of traffic. I've had that supervisor. Okay, Milton is my next door neighbor.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. I do love Office Space, and I appreciate it more and more. And I think that there are messages that you can take from this movie, but yeah, I'll give it 4.2 out of 5.
I love it. Yeah, I feel like Office Space is to the corporate world what Waiting is to people in the restaurant industry. Because
Waiting.
It's another movie for the conversation. Oh man. So, well, before we get out of here, Moose, where can people find you?
I am on Twitter at Big Moose Haas. And I really don't have too much to pitch. My cousin, who I think everyone at this point knows as Cousin Ryan, asked me earlier today to plug a podcast that he's putting together. It's going to be called For All Nerd Kind.
Okay.
He's planning on potentially dropping it sometime in July. So follow him. He's at Cousin Ryan 2022.
On it.
And I think his first guest is going to be Brother Lomas and myself.
I love that. I love that.
It should be a lot of fun.
Awesome. And if you all enjoy what you're hearing, please subscribe, rate, and review on whatever audio platform you're listening to us on. If you're listening on YouTube, please make sure you subscribe, like, and hit the little bell for notifications. Anytime we have new content drop, you'll be the first to know. And of course, let me know your thoughts in the comments on Office Space, or leave me suggestions on what films you would like to have covered on You've Never Seen It. You can follow the show on Twitter at Never Seen It FNR, and you can follow me at Allison Salamone. And until next time, my friends, be safe and go watch some movies. Bye.